Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to dive into some invisible systemic math that literally determines whether you get to retire early at 54 or if you're stuck grinding it out until you're 67. And the wildest part of all this, it's almost entirely based on the vehicle you choose to drive. We're going to completely unpack what's known as the new car penalty. Okay, let's jump right in. Starting with Section 1, a tale of two drivers. Let's look at a really stark comparison between two 37-year-old engineers. We'll call them Troy and Chad. Now, they have the exact same background, the exact same state school engineering degree, and essentially the exact same income and family size, right? From the outside, their lives look totally identical, except for one crucial detail. Troy is strapped with a massive $1,000 a month payment on a shiny 2024 Ford F-150 Lariat. Chad, on the other hand, well, he drives a 2020 Toyota Camry that he bought used, and he completely paid it off last spring. And that single, totally normal lifestyle choice, it brilliantly illustrates a massive hidden consequence. Because Chad hasn't been throwing his money at a depreciating asset month after month, he currently has $340,000 sitting in his 401k. Troy? Well, Troy has only 14 grand. Because of a car, there is a staggering $326,000 wealth gap between two guys who bring home the exact same paycheck. No way, right? So, the huge question we have to solve in this explainer is, how exactly did a seemingly normal, everyday vehicle purchase completely destroy $250,000 in wealth? How did Troy end up essentially torching his retirement money just to maintain that new car smell? That brings us to Section 2, the affordability illusion. To understand the trap Troy fell into, we really have to look at what the auto industry has quietly done to prices over the last few decades. The trajectory here is absolutely wild. Prices have completely skyrocketed. Back in 1995, the average new car in America cost about 20 grand. By 2010, it crept up to $29,000. But fast forward to September 2025, it crossed $50,000 for the average car. Not a luxury car, just the average. And if you want an average full-size pickup truck today, you're looking at over $66,000, which, let's be honest, is basically a mortgage with cup holders. And because literally nobody can afford these prices on standard 5-year loans anymore, the industry just started inventing 7-year and 8-year loans to magically make the monthly payment look normal. Now, when we break down the average auto loans for late 2025, there's a dirty little secret in the used car market we have to talk about: the interest rate. Banks charge a massive premium on used car loans because the collateral is older. So while a new car loan averages around 6.37%, the average used car loan sits way up at 11.26%. But here's the catch. Look at the total amount financed. Because the used car buyer is financing a much smaller balance, about $27,500 versus well over $43,000, they still definitively win the math. When you boil all that data down, the actual difference between these average monthly payments is $230 a month. That right there is the new car penalty in its absolute simplest form. I want you to anchor that $230 number in your mind, because we're going to pivot back to it a bit later to show just how devastating it really is over time. Moving on to Section 3, the depreciation cliff. Let's pull back the curtain on the math. The auto industry works really hard to hide behind shiny identity marketing. They want you focused on tribal status symbols, not the sheer financial cliff you're driving off of. Here's the brutal reality. The very second you drive a brand new car off the dealer's lot, it immediately loses 20% of its value. You haven't even screwed the permanent license plates on yet, and a massive chunk of your down payment has literally vanished into thin air. Over 5 years, most cars act as absolute financial paper shredders. The average new car loses 42% of its original value. Electric vehicles, broadly speaking, take an absolute bath, with models like the Nissan Leaf losing 63% over 5 years. It's a massive haircut. On the flip side, there are very select few models, like the Toyota Tacoma, that hold their ground incredibly well, only losing about 34%. But for the average buyer, you're losing $4,000 to $5,000 a year just in invisible depreciation. And because cars lose value so much faster than these new 84-month loans actually pay them down, we hit a massive crisis point. In Q4 of 2025, nearly a third, 29.3% to be exact, of all trade-ins toward new vehicles had negative equity. That means 3 out of 10 people owe more on their car than it's actually worth, by an average of over $7,000. This creates what we call the negative equity flywheel. People walk into dealerships, start with $7,000 or even $15,000 of debt on a car they're trading in, and then they just roll that right into a new 84-month loan on a brand new car.
Dealerships completely normalize this. They trap millions of Americans in a self-perpetuating debt machine that relies entirely on buyers focusing on the monthly payment instead of the total cost of the vehicle.
Let's get into section 4, the real math. I know exactly what some of you might be thinking right now. You're saying, but wait, isn't it riskier and a whole lot more expensive to maintain a used car? Well, let's systematically destroy that myth, which, by the way, is a myth mostly pushed by the very people who profit when you buy brand new. Do used cars actually just constantly break down and drain your wallet? The data says otherwise. According to AAA's 2025 driving cost study, a well-chosen 3 to 5-year-old used car actually costs slightly less or right about the same to maintain as a brand new car. The high-end difference is maybe $100 a year. That difference is essentially just one single tank of gas a year. The whole unreliable used car thing is largely a boogeyman. Furthermore, we have to talk about the F&I office, finance and insurance. This is where the real extraction happens. Right when you're exhausted and you just want the keys, dealerships make an average of over $2,500 in pure profit per car right here. They push overpriced extended warranties, gap insurance marked up by hundreds of dollars, and ridiculous paint protection. But the absolute biggest trap? Interest rate markups. The bank might actually approve you at 6%, but the dealer quietly marks it up to 7% or 8% and just pockets the difference. That one little percentage point markup costs you about $1,400 in extra interest. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, buying time, not trucks. So let's bring this all back to Troy and Chad to see the explosive power of avoiding that dealership tax. Chad chose to pay the wealth-building tax instead. He bought a perfectly fine 4-year-old used car and paid it off fully. But step 3 is where the real magic happens. He automatically invested the monthly payment difference between his used car and Troy's new truck. For 14 years, he consistently poured that $393 to $700 difference into a low-cost index fund. By driving debt-free and letting those returns compound, Chad put himself completely on track to retire at 54. And that leaves us with this final thought. The car you drive isn't the cost. The car you don't buy is the wealth. Troy bought a truck, Chad bought time. As this explainer wraps up, I want you to really ask yourself, are you honestly willing to trade years of your future freedom, literal years of your retirement, just to impress strangers at a stoplight today? Run the math. I'll catch you next time.